Drinking ice for 10 years is difficult to cool hot blood. A generation of military kings has returned, and from then on, no one dares to block the path to heaven. Official Book Friends Group of Yipintang. 731053137 Keywords of the novel. Dragon Stab Soldier King. No pop-ups. Dragon Stab Soldier King TXT Complete Collection Download. Dragon Stab Soldier King Latest Chapter Reading. Chapter 1. This is a Faith. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. This is a Faith. Despite the sunset, Jiangning City, known as the Furnace, is still extremely hot. After a whole day of exposure to the sun, the cement floor has stirred up layers of heat waves, making the air unbearable. At this moment, Tang Feng stood on the scorching ground, with his feet together and his eyes shining brightly. His straight body was like a spear standing there. If it weren't for the tattered security suit he was wearing, anyone who saw him would think he was an outstanding special breed soldier. Because almost half of the day has passed since he started working at 8 o'clock in the morning, he still stands still in front of the security pavilion, only moving once during this period, which is still due to his lunch break. The door of the security booth was suddenly opened, and a guy who was dark all over and wearing an olive-colored security uniform, but had a physique that was more than half a head shorter than Tang Feng, poked his head out and squinted at Tang Feng. He couldn't help but say, "Feng Zi, we're just security guards here. Are you standing there like a wooden pestle all day? Is that necessary?" Tang Feng didn't look back, only said calmly, "We are security guards, that's right. But since we have received our salary, we should do our job well and stand up for them steadfastly." Zhou Xiaohe shook his hand disapprovingly and said, "You still stand steadfastly on your guard. I see you're clearly standing foolishly. There hasn't even been a ghost's shadow this afternoon. Who would care about us little security guards if you stand there to show them?" Tang Feng remained indifferent and said, "Standing guard is not about showing anyone. For me, it's a kind of faith. Do you still have faith? Did you stand up for your faith? Well, you can tell me. In the past month or so, have you received praise from the hotel owner for standing up all day? Your so-called faith has given you even a halfpenny raise." Zhou Xiaohe was full of righteous indignation. If it weren't for Tang Feng's usual brotherly loyalty, he couldn't help but curse. This person is really foolish. Tang Feng did not answer. He still stood there with his head high, his deep gaze as if it had passed through the bustling traffic before him, drifting onto the vast wilderness where military songs were sung. Since being brought into the army at the age of 8, he has been in the army for nearly 15 years now, and his military qualities have long been ingrained in his bones. If it weren't for that incident, Tang Feng would have thought he would spend his entire life in the military camp until he died in battle. However, due to the shocking international incident, he had no choice but to leave the army just as Tang Feng was losing his composure. A rapid whistle pulled him back to reality. A young man with a gasoline head sitting in the driver's seat of the red Porsche Cayenne kept honking his horn to urge him. "It's broken. This second-generation ancestor is here, quickly raise the fence." Zhou Xiaohe hurriedly took out the remote control from his pocket, but at this moment, due to nervousness, the remote control fell into the gap below the security pavilion. The oily young man who drove the Cayenne waited for a while, but suddenly became impatient. He rolled down the car window probe and cursed, "What's so special, you two little security guards, you guys, are dragging around when you open the door? Do you still want to work here?" Zhou Xiaohe was busy pulling out the remote control, but the gap was too small to be pulled out. Tang Feng shook his head when he saw this and walked down, grabbing the fence and pulling it up, then lifted it up directly. The Cayenne youth drove slowly past, and as they approached, they didn't forget to turn their heads and curse, "You two little security guards can't even do a good job at the hotel gate. You're even dumber than Ben Xiao's family watchdog. I really don't know what my uncle paid you to come here for to eat." At this moment, Tang Feng realized that there was a young girl with a seductive figure and a beautiful face lying on the back seat of the Cayenne. She had messy hair and a drooping head, looking unconscious, clearly drugged. Tang Feng reached out and tapped on the back window, saying, "This girl, it seems like something's not quite right." Zhou Shu, the second ancestor, looked at him with a sidelong glance and sneered, "Isn't it that you, the little security guard, still want to meddle in your own business?" Tang Feng frowned and said, "Our men are really capable of picking girls. It's a bit shameful for you to use such vulgar methods, isn't it?" Zhou Shu was furious on the spot and cursed loudly, "He's so numb. How come I still need you to teach me how to pick girls? I don't even pee and take care of myself. Just you little security guard, I can drown you with just a mouthful of saliva." As he opened his mouth and spat, Tang Feng was quick-witted and dodged. The second ancestor immediately drove out and cursed incessantly before leaving. Tang Feng raised his sword eyebrows and was about to take steps to chase after him, but he was grabbed by Zhou Xiaohe. "Feng Zi, what do you want to do? Are you really crazy? Are you still planning to take care of this kind of thing? Didn't you see the girl in the back seat drugged?" Tang Feng asked. "Of course I saw it, but don't you think about it. What's the other party's background? The powerful and influential young master in Jiangning City, even this 5-star hotel is owned by his uncle. We're just security guards, why bother managing it?" Tang Feng pointed to the second-generation ancestor who was carrying the unconscious girl into the hotel in front of him and said word for word, "I've only been here as a security guard for over a month. This kid brought 12 women back to the hotel before and after. The first one is a woman with a red head and green hair, sitting in the passenger seat chatting and laughing with that kid. I don't need to worry about it. The second time was a pair of twin sisters. They were still secretly counting money in the back seat, and I had no obligation to manage it. The fourth one is an elderly and beautiful young woman, I'm too lazy to take care of it. The fifth one is a woman who is drunk, and I can also ignore it. But now this young girl, obviously drugged by that kid, I can't ignore it." He immediately ran towards the hotel lobby. "Feng Zi, please stop, don't be foolish. Let's not talk about whether you have the ability to manage it. Even if you save the girl, if we blame her from above in the end, we will all be unable to bear it and walk away." Zhou Xiaohe stomped his feet anxiously behind. Tang Feng, however, was too lazy to pay attention and rushed straight to the front desk, asking the two waiters, "Where did Zhou Shu just go with that girl?" As a 5-star hotel, there are not fewer than 100 rooms, so it is naturally impossible to search for them one by one. Otherwise, even if you find them in the end, the yellow cauliflower will be cold. The waiter said, "We can't tell you that." Tang Feng raised his eyebrows and said, "Can't you see that the girl has been drugged?" The waiter still said, "Even if we get drugged, what can we do? We're just helping others work. As ordinary people, how dare we meddle in our own affairs? It's better to do our job honestly, and turn a blind eye to some things." Tang Feng said coldly, "If you put yourself in your shoes and were the one being drugged, what would you think?" The two of them fell silent for an instant, and the waiter on the right said, "Presidential suite on the 18th floor, hurry up, I'll thank you for that girl." The left waiter pursed his lips and said to himself, "He's just a small security guard who can't even manage himself. He still wants to meddle in Zhou Dashao's affairs. He's really ignorant and foolish. He will definitely end up in a miserable situation later." Tang Feng, who was too lazy to pay attention, rushed towards the elevator like an arrow and quickly appeared in front of the presidential suite. He kicked his foot forward with a loud bang, and the door was kicked to pieces. The new book set sail, welcome new and old readers, sincere thanks to Yipintang. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Heroes Want to Save Beauty. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Heroes Want to Save Beauty. In the magnificent suite, Zhou Shu was about to take action when the door slammed open. Zhou Shu panicked and turned his head, realizing that the person walking in was actually the little security guard from earlier. He immediately became furious and said, "You bastard, you really ate ambition and dared to interfere in my affairs. Let her go, I won't make it difficult for you." Tang Feng walked over. "Are you still making things difficult for me?" Zhou Shu seemed to have heard a big joke and burst into laughter, shouting, "You little security guard. I have to say that I admire your courage, but I feel sad for your ignorance. I don't even know what to do or not to do." Tang Feng didn't want to talk nonsense, so he ran straight to the bed and reached out to grab it. "Stop it, Tang Feng. Do you know what you're doing?" Suddenly, 5 security guards in olive uniforms with batons rushed into the room. Tang Feng couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. He naturally knew these 5 people, and the leader among them was the captain of the hotel security team, Guiyong. "Immediately kneel down and apologize to Zhou Xiao, admit your ignorance just now, and then get out of here." Guiyong waved his baton and shouted. "What are you still waiting for? If you want to survive, why don't you leave quickly? If you want to save the beauty with heroes, don't even look at what this place is," said the older security guard. "I can leave, but this person, I must take it away." Tang Feng spoke with a resounding tone. He did not explain the reason to the 5 people, nor did he expect their help. Instead, in the eyes of these people who cannot distinguish right from wrong, saying more is unnecessary. "Bastard, it seems that if I don't give you some color, you don't even know how to write, die. Guiyong, go ahead and give me a break." Zhou Shu gritted his teeth and drank coldly. "Tang Feng, you are ignorant and foolish. You insist on meddling in your own affairs, no wonder our captain." Guiyong shouted coldly and waved his baton to pounce. Tang Feng stood still and waited for someone to rush towards him. With just one punch, Guiyong was immediately thrown out like a broken kite. "Good kid, there are 2 sons. No wonder you dare to act so recklessly. If you 4 go up together and waste his legs for me, I'll give you 500,000 yuan each." The 4 security guards looked at each other, unable to resist the attraction of money, and rushed out like tigers and wolves. Tang Feng stood still and watched as the 4 of them pounced, their fists lightning fast and striking 4 times in a row. In an instant, there was a loud bang, and all 4 of them flew out in confusion. Without looking at the 4 of them, Tang Feng turned around and bent down, ready to pick up the girl on the bed. Zhou Shu couldn't help but tremble with anger when he saw this, and his eyes cracked as he said, "Tang, I admit that you have some skills, but do you think you can act recklessly with this ability? Perhaps you can take her away today, but I can guarantee that I will definitely kill you, the little security guard, and this little girl in the future." Tang Feng had already picked up the girl, but upon hearing this, he put her down again, then turned around and walked step by step towards Zhou Shu. "What do you want to do? I'm warning you, kid. I'm the eldest young master of the Phoenix Group." Zhou Yun threatened. Tang Feng remained silent, with no expression on his face. He immediately reached out and grabbed his arm, twisting it with force. The sound of a click broke his right arm. "My name is Tang Feng and I live at number 8 on He Lane. If you want revenge, you can come to me at any time." Tang Feng said, lazily taking another look, turned around and picked up the woman and left. The 5 security guards in the room watched him leave quietly, and no one dared to stop him. The crowd of onlookers around them all stepped back and gave way. As she walked into the elevator, Tang Feng was able to look at the person in her arms. Her curved willow eyebrows and small mouth appeared cute and pure, and her tall nose bridge made her facial features very three-dimensional and delicate. For some reason, Tang Feng felt that this girl in her 20s was very familiar, as if he had seen her somewhere before. However, he soon realized something was wrong, and the girl's face gradually turned red. This grandson, he even mixed medicine. Tang Feng furrowed his brows and quickly walked towards the hall. At this moment, the girl opened her eyes slightly, and in her hazy gaze, she vaguely saw the thin face of the past, and also smelled the long-lost scent. "Is that you, Brother Tang? Have you finally come back?" The girl in her arms exclaimed excitedly, "It's really you, Brother Tang Feng. After 15 years, you finally came back." "I'm Brother Tang, Ruyan." Xiao Ruyan originally wanted to shout, but due to her weakness and dry mouth, she couldn't shout out at all. She was just in a hurry. Tang Feng couldn't hear her and went to the hall to hand the girl over to the waiter just now. "Take her to the hospital immediately, any further delay would be very dangerous," he said. "Why don't you go? Besides, taking it to the hospital or something, I'm afraid it'll cost a lot of money, right?" The waiter on the left pouted. What she couldn't stand the most was Tang Feng, a poor security guard who had no money or power and had to meddle in his own affairs. "This is 800 yuan, I only have this little bit on me. If it's not enough, you can put it on your side for now, just as if I borrowed it from you." Tang Feng took out the money from his pocket and placed it on the table. It's not that he doesn't want to take it to the hospital, but the matter here has not been completely resolved. Moreover, this girl has been drugged with love medicine, and it's not convenient for him to take it. The waiter on the left curled his lips when he saw this, his expression filled with a strong sense of disdain and indifference. The waiter on the right side said, "As you're a nice person, I helped you out. Take her to the side of the road, and I'll go stop her." The taxi arrived quickly, and after getting the girl onto the car, Tang Feng turned around and returned. Xiao Ruyan was still whispering in the car, "Brother Tang, I am Ruyan. You grew up with me in an orphanage, childhood sweetheart Ruyan. Can't you recognize me?" Tang Feng couldn't hear it anymore, and by then he had already returned to the security booth. Zhou Xiaohe rushed towards him and cursed, "Feng, are you stupid or not? Zhou Shu, a wealthy young man, can also be provoked by small security guards like us. I heard you even broke that kid's hand. You should run away quickly, otherwise I'm afraid my life will be in danger." Tang Feng only smiled faintly and didn't say anything. Zhou Xiaohe became even more angry and couldn't help but curse again. "Did you think your brain had gone crazy? Or did you just stand guard all day and be foolish? I told you to run quickly, don't you know?" Just as he was speaking, a middle-aged man in a suit and leather shoes, accompanied by more than 10 security guards, rushed towards him angrily. "It's over now, Manager Li has brought people." Zhou Xiaohe sighed. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Serious Consequences. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. Serious Consequences. Manager Li was very angry, really angry, because just now, the hotel owner Liang Tianshan called and said that his nephew Zhou Shu had his arm broken at the Phoenix Hotel. In his own territory, in the hotel under the jurisdiction of Li Jianhui, the young master of the Zhou family was beaten up. If this matter is not handled properly and the security guard surnamed Tang is not deposed, then his manager may end up in trouble. "Hello, your surname is Tang. You have eaten the courage of an ambitious leopard. You dare to fight the crown prince of the Zhou family. Now we officially notify you that you and Zhou Xiaohe have been fired." Li Jianhui shouted angrily, and as he waved his hand, 12 security guards gathered around. "This stinky kid is really arrogant. He didn't run even after hitting someone. Now it's up to you to die." Guiyong gritted his teeth. Tang Feng remained silent because he knew that even a few words with such people were unnecessary. It was like communicating with a dog, and it simply didn't make sense. He leaned on the edge of the fence outside the pavilion, took out a blue box of real dragons for 5.5 yuan from his pocket, pulled out a stick, and didn't look around at the security guards. Li Jianhui's nose was crooked with anger, and he waved his hand and said, "This kid is quite capable. You guys go up to me. The big boss has sent a message. Whoever breaks this kid's bone will receive a reward of 100,000 yuan. A dozen or so security guards suddenly shone with gold in their eyes, each with at least 108 bones on their body. If they were all broken, wouldn't it be 18 million? However, dreams are beautiful, but reality is very cruel. As soon as these dozen or so security guards moved, Tang Feng rushed out like a shell. His speed was so fast that people around him couldn't even see clearly. Everyone only heard a series of loud bangs, and in the blink of an eye, more than a dozen people all lay on the ground with bruises and swollen faces. The people around them were all scared and stunned when they saw this. Tang Feng clapped his hands, then grabbed his cigarette holder and flicked off a long piece of burnt ash, then turned around and walked step by step towards Li Jianhui. "What do you want to do? I warn you, if you dare to touch me, the consequences will be very serious." Li Jianhui wanted to shout loudly, only to realize that his voice was trembling. Tang Feng threw his cigarette butt on the ground and stomped it out with a smile, saying, "Since we've all been fired, you have to pay us for this month and a half of salary, right? You kid still wants money, you're almost on the brink of death, do you know?" Li Jianhui shook off the safe he was holding in his hand. "I might as well tell you, the money is here. There's plenty of money in the box, but I'm afraid you kid wouldn't dare to take it." Tang Feng remained silent and kicked him to the ground, then raised his fist and slammed it down with a loud bang. The safe was sturdy and undamaged, and he punched again and again. 3 punches before and after, the box was smashed on the spot, and the banknotes inside were immediately scattered all over the ground. When people around saw this, their mouths were wide open and their faces were filled with shock. This guy's fists were too hard, even smashing such a hard safe. If this punch were to hit a person, he would probably be disabled even if he didn't die. According to the contract, the security guard earns a monthly salary of 2,200 yuan. Zhou Xiaohe and I worked for a total of 1.5 months, and all of them added up to 6,600 yuan. Tang Feng bent down as he spoke, then stared around in amazement, carefully picking up 100 yuan bills from the pile until he had enough of 66 before waving at Zhou Xiaohe and turning around to leave. Liang Jianhui looked at this scene and was so angry that his face turned purple. He gritted his teeth and shouted, "Tang, are you planning to leave like this?" Tang Feng turned around and shook the thick stack of 100 yuan bills in his hand. He said calmly, "Why, are you afraid I might have taken too much? Why don't you come and count?" He handed the stack of bills to Liang Jianhui. Liang Jianhui didn't dare to reach out and grab it. Even now, his mind couldn't stop thinking about the scene of Tang Feng smashing the safe with 3 punches just now. He had to grit his head and say, "Tang, maybe we can't keep you today, but the matter of you breaking Zhou Dashao's arm is definitely not over. Unless you escape Jiangning, the Zhou family won't let you go." Tang Feng nodded and said, "Tell the Zhou family that when they come to find me, please make sure to come during the day, otherwise it will disturb my rest and the consequences will be very serious." After saying these words, he walked away without looking back. Zhou Xiaohe looked around and finally shook his head, silently sighing and chasing after him. Coming out of the Purple Phoenix Hotel, the setting sun is setting in the west, and the dusk is pressing down. Stars are scattered on the sky. "Fengzi, where are we going next?" Zhou Xiaohe asked. In fact, he had intended to ask Tang Feng where he would go after leaving Jiangning. After all, small security guards like them, who have no background, have offended wealthy and powerful figures like the Zhou family. There is no other way but to run away, but he couldn't say that. Tang Feng shook the stack of large bills in his hand and suddenly laughed. "It's rare that we have money. Let's go have a drink." He threw 4,000 yuan of it to Zhou Xiaohe, but before he could react, he went straight to the taxi. When the night fell completely and the lights were on, the two of them arrived at a bar called Midi Desire Drunk. As they arrived early, the bar didn't have many customers, so Tang Feng's imported vodka was quickly delivered. This kind of wine is very strong, and Zhou Xiaohe choked uncontrollably after only taking a small sip. Tang Feng smiled at his flushed face and didn't force himself to drink it alone. It is said that there is a story with wine, but now that wine has arrived, it is still Tang Feng's strong imported vodka, which he has always loved to drink. However, he is full of stories, but I don't know where to start. Zhou Xiaohe, who is dark, thin, and has a somewhat rebellious personality, is obviously not a good confidant. Unfortunately, at this moment, Zhou Xiaohe asked, Feng Zi, if you're not mistaken, you used to be a soldier, right? Upon hearing the words, joining the army, Tang Feng trembled uncontrollably all over. He nodded slightly and then looked up to drink the wine from the bottle. Zhou Xiaohe asked again, seeing how skilled you are, what are you doing in the army? Tang Feng was stunned for a moment and casually said, those who kill pigs. Pig slayer. Zhou Xiaohe widened his eyes and exclaimed in surprise, can the army practice such skills in pig killing? Looking at Zhou Xiaohe's appearance of being involved, Tang Feng couldn't help but laugh and say, of course, this pig has been killed too many times. With one strike, over the years, he has naturally developed his skills. So it's like this, I remember. The village bully in my area used to be a pig slayer, and his skills were also very impressive. He could even fight 5 at a time. Zhou Xiaohe nodded in agreement. Tang Feng remained dumbfounded. This guy even compared his famous Dragon Stab King to the village pig killer, which made Tang Feng laugh and cry, so he had to shake his head and drink on his back. Just as the two of them were chatting and drinking, many guests entered the bar one after another. One of them, a woman wearing a fiery red floral long dress with a hot, full, and alluring figure, suddenly walked towards them with style. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. You found the wrong person. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. You found the wrong person. The woman in red is heavily makeup and glamorous, although not stunning and beautiful, she excels in her fiery figure. Her twisted waist is extremely charming, like that ripe peach. No man can resist taking a bite at it. Of course, Zhou Xiaohe also had this hormonal impulse. As he watched the beautiful snake approach, his heart was also rapidly beating faster. Tang Feng clearly noticed it too, but he didn't care. His face remained expressionless and he just sat there drinking his vodka with his back up. Two handsome guys, can you enjoy a glass of wine? The woman in red sat down very familiar. After realizing that Tang Feng was not very fond of her, she turned her smiling face to Zhou Xiaohe next to her. Of course. Zhou Xiaohe shuddered as he quickly poured a glass of wine. Although he had never been to a bar before, he knew it was a way of getting along. Even his whole body felt a bit ethereal, and he couldn't help but wonder if he was really handsome to the point where he was so amazing that he had an affair on his first visit to a bar. The woman in red took a small sip and then smiled. This is vodka imported from Snow Country in 1992. It has a prominent feature of being very strong. The two of you ordered 8 bottles in one go, it's really a real man. She said with a thumbs up. Zhou Xiaohe chuckled foolishly and said, it's okay. Actually, I can't get used to drinking this kind of strong liquor. I'm almost drunk after just a sip. The woman in red suddenly leaned over and said with a smile, that's right. She just took a small sip and now she's almost dizzy. Listening to this seductive and charming sound, Zhou Xiaohe suddenly felt at a loss. He had lived for 23 years and is still an old man. When did he experience such a scene? Tang Feng watched from the side, just smiling and shaking his head without speaking, continuing to drink his strong vodka. The woman in red said again, she's already drunk, why don't I come home with you? Are you going home with me? Isn't that right? Oh good. Zhou Xiaohe felt that happiness had come too suddenly, half hugging and half supporting the woman and pulling her up. The woman saw that the heat had reached and said softly, we can come home with you, but they have a small condition that requires a little appearance fee. Shouldn't that be a problem? Originally, as long as it was a normal man, it was almost difficult to refuse, but unfortunately, Zhou Xiaohe seemed a bit abnormal. Although he was dizzy, he was not foolish, and finally heard something. Appearance fee. What appearance fee? Zhou Xiaohe asked. If someone goes back with you, they can still make you have a good night, but they can't do it in vain. You have to pay some compensation, the woman said. Damn it, so you're asking for money. Zhou Xiaohejiu woke up and pushed the person away, saying, I was just saying that I'm not handsome either. I thought this good thing would happen. As he turned his head to look at Tang Feng, he rebuked and said, Feng, you're not being kind. You've already seen that this woman is out for sale, haven't you? Don't remind me either. Tang Feng couldn't help but smile as he pinched the wine bottle, thinking to himself that he was supposed to remind you, but just now he saw that you two were talking to each other, so how could he be too embarrassed to disturb you? The woman in red angrily said, What's wrong with selling it out? Everyone is willing to take what they need. Are you really doing it or not? Be a bird, I work hard as a security guard for only 2,000 yuan a month, and this salary needs to be kept to treat my mother's illness and buy medicine. Hurry up and leave. If you want to do business, you found the wrong person. I don't have the money. Zhou Xiaohe shook hands. The woman in red was completely angry and gritted her teeth, sarcastically saying, Why are you two poor ghosts? It's a waste of my mother's youth. And you're a drinker. You don't have money. Why do you pretend to be an old man and order imported vodka from Snow Country? Are you pretending to be a tasteless girl here? If you don't look at you, just two little security guards, why don't you hurry back and guard the door like a dog, so as not to embarrass yourself here? After getting a haircut, he picked up his small shoulder bag and twisted his waist before leaving. Stop me! Tang Feng shouted, patting the bottle against the table and saying, Tell me, how much does it cost to appear on stage for one night? You. The woman in red raised her eyebrows, with a clear expression on her face, indicating that you can afford this price. Is this enough? Tang Feng patted the 500 yuan bill on the table. What kind of ordinary people are you when you're an old lady? The woman in red sneered. What about this? Tang Feng patted the 500 yuan bill towards the table. This barely makes it once. What about these? Tang Feng shook his hand and patted 100 yuan bills onto the table. The woman in red finally smiled, with a charming smile on her face. Well, for the sake of money, I. She was about to reach out and take the money. Tang Feng pointed out and said, Turn left on the 2nd Street corner when you go out. There's a stray male dog, hold it and sleep for a night. This money is yours. He smashed the 200 yuan bills into her face. You. The woman in red trembled with anger. Originally, you came out to sell, and I didn't have any objections, but you looked down on people with your dog's eyes and didn't even have the minimum respect. Remember that your face is earned by yourself, not by others. Don't get out of here. Tang Feng said without looking at her again, grabbed the bottle of wine, and drank it all in one gulp. Kid, don't be too proud, wait for me. Although the woman spoke confidently, she still had the audacity to pick up the money on the ground and left in embarrassment. The commotion here was quite loud, and many people around naturally saw it. Among them, several regulars couldn't help but coldly say, Those two kids are new here. Even the matchmaker dares to offend them. Don't they know that the matchmaker is Ma Ye's person? Just these ignorant little security guards want to come to such a place to show their presence. Let's see. When the horse comes, they will feel good. In addition, this scene was also noticed by a woman wearing a black professional suit in the corner. In fact, since the woman walked into the bar not long ago, her gaze intentionally or unintentionally glanced towards Tang Feng. Tang Feng clearly noticed this tall and unique woman with two curved willow leaf eyebrows and melon seed faces, but he didn't pay attention. After all, he didn't think he was handsome enough to charm all the girls like Zhou Xiaohe. To Tang Feng's surprise, the stunning woman in this professional suit, who had an outstanding temperament, walked towards him like the woman in red just now after finishing the cocktail in her glass. "Two of you, can you treat me to a drink?" The stunning woman smiled and sat in the same position as the woman in red earlier, even in a similar way to start a conversation. Upon seeing this, Zhou Xiaohei's originally black face immediately darkened and he cursed, "Did you also come out to sell and ask for money? I'll tell you that you found the wrong person. If you don't ask for money, hurry up and get lost." End of this chapter. Chapter 5. You are missing a woman. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. You are missing a woman. Zhou Xiaohei's words left Tang Feng and the stunning woman stunned on the spot, and then both of them turned their heads and stared at him without blinking. "Why did I say the wrong thing? Aren't you just like the women in red just now, selling it?" Zhou Xiaohei asked, noticing his silly appearance, clearly not understanding the situation in front of him. Tang Feng's head was so big that he said he was afraid of opponents like gods, but he was afraid of teammates like pigs. He fully understood this tonight and hurriedly said, "Sorry, my friend has drunk too much. I hope you don't take it amiss." Although not clear about the other party's intention to approach, his intuition told Tang Feng that the stunning woman in front of him was not for sale, and his sixth sense was always accurate. The stunning woman didn't talk much about this issue, but smiled and said, "How could a big man not even be willing to invite me to a drink?" Tang Feng smiled and poured her a glass of wine, saying, "This wine is very strong. Don't get drunk, otherwise it's giving me a chance." The stunning woman remained silent and drank all the wine in her glass with a gulp on her back. She then looked up at him and paused word by word, saying, "I have always been very accurate in judging people. Although you dress casually, the buttons are very neat, which shows that you are a rigorous person. Besides, since I came in, you have drunk 3 bottles of vodka and smoked 18 cigarettes, which indicates that you have something on your mind. You are using alcohol to drown your sorrows. And you occasionally look at your watch and unconsciously observe your surroundings, which indicates that you have a strong sense of time. If you're not mistaken, you're a soldier, right?" Speaking of this stunning woman, she glanced at Tang Feng and then said, "Besides, you know very well whether the dog on the second left corner when you go out is male or female. This indicates." "What does this mean?" Zhou Xiaohei next to him couldn't help but interject. "This indicates that this person is a bit abnormal," said the stunning woman, who raised her lips slightly and looked at Tang Feng playfully. Zhou Xiaohei couldn't help but nod and said, "I also think so. We passed through the intersection just now, and I didn't see a dog there. But Fengzi happened to notice, and even noticed that it was a female." Tang Feng glanced at Zhou Xiaohei and met the gaze of the stunning woman, shrugging and saying, "From your professional suit, if you're not mistaken, you're probably at a bar after work, which means your workplace is very close to here. Furthermore, from your restrained sitting posture with your legs together, and sometimes not forgetting to be vigilant around, it seems that you don't come to the bar very often, and it's likely your first time here. Also, your shoulder bag is a world-renowned brand, and the material inside the underwear is good. It is also a world-renowned brand, which indicates that your family background is good." Tang Feng picked up the wine bottle and looked up to take a sip. Next to him, Zhou Xiaohei couldn't help but ask, "I'm curious about Fengzi. Why can't I even see her underwear inside, while you can see exactly what brand she's wearing?" Tang Feng gave him another white glance without answering his words, and then continued, "And you just walked with your legs tightly closed and there was no gap in your hips. This indicates that you are very likely still in a different position, right?" After finishing this sentence, Tang Feng pinched the wine bottle, slightly raised the corner of his mouth, and playfully looked at her without blinking. The stunning woman's face slightly changed, but soon regained her composure. She smiled and said, "There is some truth to my analysis. It seems that I didn't misjudge anyone. Nice to meet you. My name is Zhuge Furong. Tang Feng, nice to meet you." Tang Feng lightly touched her glass with a wine bottle, then drank it all on his back, and the two of them made an introduction. Zhuge Furong placed the cup on the table and continued, "Look at you two big men drinking here. It seems like you still lack a woman." Tang Feng did not deny it and joked, "In fact, I am not missing a woman, but a lot." Zhou Xiaohe interjected, "In fact, I also lack women." Zhuge Furong ignored Zhou Xiaohe and instead focused her gaze on Tang Feng, asking, "What do you think of me?" "You." This time, not only Zhou Xiaohe, but also Tang Feng were all stunned in the same place. Zhuge Furong chuckled lightly and said, "Why, do you think I'm ugly and uninterested?" In fact, Zhuge Furong is not only not ugly, but also stunningly beautiful. With a height of nearly 1.72 meters, she appears tall and delicate, with a delicate melon seed face paired with two willow eyebrows and cherry lips, making her look like the beauty in the painting. Especially now she is wearing a black professional uniform with a white shirt underneath, giving her a fashionable and intellectual beauty. If we had to score, the woman in red just now barely passed, and the Zhuge Furong in front of her at least scored over 90 points. As the saying goes, everyone has a love for beauty, and Tang Feng couldn't help but nod and say, "Actually, I'm very interested, but unfortunately, I don't have the money either." Zhuge Furong still smiled and said, "I don't want your money. On the contrary, I will still give you money." "Will you still give money?" Zhou Xiaohe widened his eyes, feeling that this was a bit unbelievable. Tang Feng's face remained unchanged as he tilted his head and took a sip of vodka before saying, "There is no free lunch in the world. To be specific, what exactly is the matter with me?" Zhuge Furong nodded and said, "How about being my boyfriend?" Tang Feng didn't answer directly, but raised his eyebrows and said, "A beautiful woman like you must not worry about not finding a boyfriend, right?" Zhuge Furong did not directly answer, but said, "You don't need to ask me about my matter. Just tell me, do it or not." Of course, this is in name, in other words, it's a fake boyfriend. In fact, Zhuge Furong was also quite depressed in her heart. If it weren't for the family's pressure and helplessness, she wouldn't have resorted to such a strategy and had no choice but to find a stranger to handle it. Of course, she wasn't just randomly searching. In fact, shortly after entering the bar, she began to observe secretly and found that although Tang Feng was dressed in ordinary clothes, he had an unusual temperament on his body. Furthermore, from the incident with the woman in red just now, it can be seen that this person has good character and is upright and just. In fact, it was precisely because of the scene with the woman in red just now that Zhuge Furong suddenly had a strange idea and made this decision that even she found strange. "What do I need to do when you are your nominal boyfriend?" Tang Feng asked. "You don't need to do much, just show up when I need you and disappear when I don't need you. Of course, for the sake of seriousness, I will draft an agreement that will pay you during the period, just like hiring you. How about it, do you accept it?" Zhuge Furong finished in one breath and looked up at him. Tang Feng shrugged and said, "Coincidentally, I was fired today and I am also a boyfriend of a beautiful woman like you. I think as long as he is a normal man, he will not refuse." "So you agree?" "Of course, because I am also a normal man." End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Ask me if I agree with my fist answer. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Ask me if I will answer with my fist or not, so, have a pleasant cooperation. Zhuge Furong smiled and raised her wine glass, with a demeanor that exuded a certain aura. It was evident that she usually held a high position, exuding the aura of a manager. Have a pleasant cooperation. Tang Feng also raised the wine bottle and the two of them touched it. Zhuge Furong looked at her watch and said, "It's getting late. Take me home. This is my first task as my nominal boyfriend, so there shouldn't be any problem, right?" Tang Feng nodded and said, "Of course not a problem, but you don't have to worry. I'll take you home late at night, and if I accidentally do something fake, I'll do it." "Fake it for real?" "It depends on whether you have the ability." Zhuge Furong smiled calmly, then stood up and walked out, and Tang Feng naturally stood up to follow. Zhou Xiaohe shouted from behind, then Fengzi, should I also take her home together? What do you say? Tang Feng turned his head and asked him in response. Zhou Xiaohe was not foolish. He scratched his head and chuckled, then forget it. I'll take a taxi home on my own. You're quite clever, I'll contact you tomorrow and look for a job together. Tang Feng said and chased after Zhuge Furong. Just as the two had not yet left the bar lobby, a large group of people suddenly rushed into the doorway. The leader was a strong and powerful man with a bare shoulder, a blue dragon tattooed on his left arm, and a red tiger painted on his right arm. Beside the Han, there stood the red-clad women who had just been driven away by Tang Feng. Tang Feng immediately understood that this blue dragon and white tiger tattooed man was probably the Ma Yi mentioned by the regular customers around him just now. Ma Yi, it's him, it's this kid. Not only did he humiliate me just now, but he also openly said that he didn't take you seriously. The matchmaker pointed at Tang Feng and shouted. This kid. You're so brave. Tattooed Horse Master spat and waved his hand. A dozen or so young men behind him immediately rushed out, surrounding Tang Feng and Zhuge Furong. The originally noisy bar immediately quieted down, and many acquaintances who knew this horse knew him as the street bully, with a wild and cruel nature, and left the table one after another. Tang Feng stood still and didn't move. Instead, he took out a cigarette from his pocket, lit it and sucked deeply, exhaling a long smoke ring. If someone familiar with him was present at this moment and saw his action, he knew that this guy was going to take action. Ma Yi walked over step by step, pulled out a chair, stepped on it with one foot, and then said, Kid, do you know who she is? Tang Feng said, I didn't know before. Do you know now? Ma Yi shouted. I know now, Tang Feng nodded. Ma Yi shouted again, do you know who I am? Tang Feng shook his head and said, I don't know. I don't know. Ma Yi drank coldly and spat, saying, then I'll tell you. I'm known as Ma Yi in the martial arts world, and I oversaw this scene. How dare you dare to touch my woman? What do you mean by this? How do you want to calculate? Tang Feng asked back. Ma Yi suddenly glanced at Zhuge Furong next to Tang Feng, and his fierce eyes lit up. He asked, is this your woman? Are you talking about her? Tang Feng shrugged and said, how do you say that? It's true. Okay, kid, I really can't tell. In less than half a quarter of an hour, your kid has made such a stunning and beautiful woman. Ma Yi Jia laughed heartily and said in a deep voice, you're such a kid. Originally, you humiliated my woman. I was determined to depose you, but Ma Yi and I have always been kind. As long as you give this woman to me, I'll spare your dog's life today. Do you want me to give her to you? Yes, but you have to ask if you agree to something, Tang Feng said. What are you asking? The whole street is covered by me, and who wouldn't dare to refuse? The horse owner scanned the whole room, his flesh trembling uncontrollably as he spoke, with an indescribable aura all over his body. Wherever he could see, all the guests present lowered their heads and dared not look at him. After all, many people knew that this man surnamed Ma was a ruthless bully. Tang Feng looked at him and slowly raised his right hand, saying, ask this, ask if my fist agrees. How dare you underestimate your master Ma? Let me take off his right arm first. I want to see how hard this kid's fist is. The master was furious and waved his hand. The dozen or so young men with sticks around him rushed towards him like wolves and tigers. The guests turned their heads when they saw this, as if they couldn't bear to see the bloody scene of Tang Feng being beaten to the ground and his right arm being removed. Unfortunately, Ma Yi did not know how hard Tang Feng's fists were, otherwise he would never have done so. In fact, up to now, even Tang Feng is not sure how hard his fist has been. He just punched and the person in front of him immediately howled and fell to the ground. In addition, his body speed was too fast. Under the colorful lights above his head, he shuttled like a ghost. In just a moment, more than 10 thugs were already lying on the ground, 7 or 8 crooked. This. Ma Yi originally wanted to wave his fist and rush over, but upon seeing this scene, his legs trembled and his pupils were filled with fear. Tang Feng skillfully flicked off a long piece of cigarette ash before turning his head to look at him and asking, "Are you still trying to remove my right arm now?" "No. I dare not." Ma Yi hesitated and shook his head. "Do you still want me to give her to you now?" Tang Feng pointed to Zhuge Furong beside him. "I dare not, I'm sorry, I was wrong. It's because I'm so blind that I offended you, sir." Ma Yi trembled with fear. Tang Feng smiled and picked up a beer bottle from the table, slamming it onto the ground with a loud bang. Then he picked up another bottle and threw it down, until the ground was covered in glass shards. "Since you are a troublemaker in the martial arts world, what should you do? You don't need me to command you, do you?" Tang Feng chuckled softly, although his tone was soft, his words carried an irresistible domineering aura. Ma Yi gritted his teeth and finally knelt down on the glass shards with a thud, and blood immediately overflowed from his knee. When the guests around saw this scene, they immediately sighed and couldn't believe that the once notorious Ma Yi was now humiliated like a grandson. "Let's go, I'll take you back." Tang Feng was too lazy to pay any further attention and turned his head to look at Zhuge Furong, who had already been stunned in place. Then he reached out and hugged her plump waist, turned around and left the door. From beginning to end, Ma Yi knelt on the ground and dared not let out a fart, until Tang Feng's figure disappeared at the door. He then exclaimed hysterically, "Don't be reckless, Tang. I'm with the Rat King. If you humiliate me like this today, you won't give the Rat King face. You must repay this debt 100 times. I want you to die." End of this chapter. 7. Chapter 7. Driving at the Slightest Disagreement. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. Driving at the slightest disagreement. Tang Feng hugged Zhuge Furong's soft waist and had already left the midi bar. He didn't even take Ma Ye's threatening words to heart. As soon as Zhuge Furong walked out of the door not far away, she suddenly froze there and didn't move. "Why haven't you left? Didn't they say they wanted to take you home?" Tang Feng asked. Zhuge Furong turned her head and said in an emotionless voice, "When are you going to hold on to this hand?" Tang Feng suddenly realized that his right hand was still holding onto the soft willow waist. He quickly released it and smiled apologetically, "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to take advantage of you, I just got used to it." "Are you used to it?" Zhuge Furong raised her willow leaf eyebrows and sneered, "Are you saying that hugging girls has already become a habit?" Tang Feng felt speechless. In fact, what he wanted to express was that during his years in the army, he had already been intimately connected with members of the Longyin battle team, and there were also 2 girls in the team. Usually, everyone would be so close and indifferent, and over time, it became a habit. Just the words just now sounded easy to misunderstand Zhuge Furong, but Tang Feng was too lazy to explain. Instead, he joked, "We are both nominal boyfriends and girlfriends. It doesn't seem excessive for me to charge some interest, does it?" Zhuge Furong, however, was too lazy to talk and instead asked, "Can you drive?" Without hesitation, Tang Feng said, "Of course, I'm an old driver." "Are you an old driver?" Zhuge Furong had already taken 2 steps when she suddenly stopped and turned her head, looking at him with a strange look. Tang Feng is not very clear about the meaning represented by the popular old driver. After all, he was taken into Longyin at the age of 8 and only returned to Jiangning a month and a half ago. Seeing the other party's strong reaction, Tang Feng thought that Zhuge Furong probably couldn't believe her driving skills, so he asked this question. He nodded and said, "You may not even know, not to mention this kind of small car, I can drive all kinds of cars. In the past, when I had a disagreement with my friends, I used to drive at lightning speed. In fact, Tang Feng did not exaggerate anything. In recent years in the military, not only did he drive household cars, including large trucks, as well as planes, tanks, and even ships and aircraft carriers. But this remark had a different flavor to Zhuge Furong's ears. She frowned and asked, "You old driver, you often drive with friends when you don't agree." Tang Feng said, "Why don't I take you for a try now? Do you still want to take me to drive?" Zhuge Furong stood still, her eyebrows furrowed even deeper. She had no idea that this guy in front of her was still an old driver who drove without a word. If she had known that the other person was such a person, she would not have been looking for him as a nominal boyfriend no matter what. "If I don't drive with you, can you drive with me?" Tang Feng clearly didn't know what the other person was thinking. He took the key and turned on the remote control, and the black Maserati CEO in front immediately lit up the side lights. Tang Feng stepped over, opened the car door and sat in the driver's seat. He then skillfully lit a cigarette and started smoking leisurely. Turning back, he saw Zhuge Furong still standing there, shouting, "What are you still waiting for? Didn't he say he wanted to take you home?" Zhuge Furong stood in place, looking at the old driver in the driver's seat who was swallowing clouds and mist. Her mood couldn't help but feel a bit complicated. If the other party really wants to drive that kind of car with her later, then I hope I didn't misread anyone. Zhuge Furong shook her head and walked over to open the car door and sit in the passenger seat. Tang Feng stepped on the gas pedal and the car roared out. His driving skills were indeed very good, with extremely fast speed. Walking on the road in the dark was like a sharp arrow, and the body of the car was quite stable. "How about it, do you believe I'm an old driver now?" Tang Feng raced and turned his head to ask. Zhuge Furong felt a bit dazed and couldn't help but ask, "Is this the old driver you're trying to express? And you said you're taking me to drive. Is it difficult to just drive like this?" Tang Feng didn't quite understand what she was saying and asked in response, "Why do you sound strange? How else can I drive without driving like this? Do you really not understand the meaning represented by an old driver? Do you also not understand the meaning of driving late at night with the opposite sex?" Zhuge Furong asked again. This time it was Tang Feng's turn to wonder, and he couldn't help but ask, "Why does this old driver have any other meaning? What is the meaning behind driving with the opposite sex at night?" "No." Zhuge Furong bit it off and breathed a sigh of relief in her heart. It seemed that she had misunderstood a lot earlier. It seemed like she didn't understand what a real old driver was like from this guy's appearance. Tang Feng originally wanted to ask, but when he saw that the other party had turned their head outside the window, he didn't speak anymore. The car suddenly quieted down, and after a short drive, Tang Feng asked, "Where do you live?" "On the address navigation, you can just follow the instructions and drive. Also, the speed is slower. I can't stand your old driver driving at high speed." Zhuge Furong regained her composure. Although she still turned her head to look out of the window, Yu Guang was already secretly scrutinizing Tang Feng and found that this guy in ordinary clothes was actually quite decent looking. He has a handsome face with sharp edges and a straight nose, and his facial features are very three-dimensional. Paired with a bunch of stubble, he exudes an indescribable masculinity. In addition, his gaze is deep and distant, and his 1.8-meter body occasionally reveals a unique sense of vicissitudes. This is a man with a story. Zhuge Furong couldn't help but have this idea in her heart. Tang Feng suddenly laughed and said, "If you want to see it, just look openly. Anyway, it's not a charge." Seeing that she had been guessed through, Zhuge Furong felt a bit embarrassed and quickly changed the topic, saying, "Turn left ahead and cross a riverside road, and you'll be there." As Tang Feng spoke, he turned the steering wheel and the car drove into Binjiang Road. A high-end villa area ahead was already in sight. "Here we are." Tang Feng stabilized the car and then pushed the door down. "Wait a moment," Zhuge Furong suddenly shouted. "Is there a task left?" Tang Feng turned his head to look at her. Zhuge Furong also turned her head and said, "This has already been delivered to the doorstep, don't you want to come up and sit with me?" Tang Feng smiled and said, "It's probably not appropriate for you to invite me up late at night, right? We are all adults, what's not appropriate?" Zhuge Furong asked with a smile. "It's precisely because we are all adults that it's not suitable, after all, it's mostly midnight when we're alone. If something happens, it's probably not good. What are you afraid of? Are you still afraid that I won't be able to eat you?" Zhuge Furong chuckled lightly. Tang Feng raised his eyebrows and said, "Can I see what you're saying as implying? What do you think?" Zhuge Furong smiled playfully, with an indescribable charm on her pretty face. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Beauty Visits at Night. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8 Beauty Visits at Night. Watching Zhuge Furong's seductive and charming expression emanating from her body, Tang Feng couldn't help but laugh and shook his head. "What are you laughing at?" Zhuge Furong turned to look at him and asked. "I'm laughing at you." Tang Feng rolled down the car window and lit a cigarette. He took a deep breath, exhaled his eye circles, and turned to look at her. "Since you have chosen me, why bother to test me so hard? Do you think I invited you up to test you?" Zhuge Furong asked. "Of course, as I just told you, I always see people very accurately." Tang Feng met her eyes, which showed affirmation, and even an absolute confidence in controlling everything. Looking at these eyes with a hint of provocation, Zhuge Furong also smiled and slightly raised the corner of her mouth, saying, "From this perspective, I haven't misjudged anyone. Congratulations on successfully withstanding the test." Tang Feng remained uncompromising. Such so-called tests were simply not enough for him. Over the past decade or so of his military career, the trials and tribulations he had experienced were far more brutal than the sugar-coated bullets he is facing now. Skillfully flicking off the cigarette ash, he smiled and said, "I do think if you sit here like this again, we won't even need to get up there. We can just get things done in the car, don't you think?" Zhuge Furong did not answer his words and pushed open the car door before walking down, while secretly cursing this guy in her heart. It was undoubtedly an experienced driver. "It's difficult to take a taxi in this place. Take my car back first, and come here tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock on time to pick me up." After saying this, Zhuge Furong walked inside without looking back. Tang Feng shouted, "This expensive luxury car, we just got to know each other. You just give it to me, aren't you afraid I'll take the opportunity to run away?" Zhuge Furong stopped and turned her head to chuckle, "Don't you think that a stunning beauty like me is not 100 times more valuable than this luxury car?" Tang Feng shook his head, and when Zhuge Furong saw her, her delicate willow leaf eyebrows immediately lifted. Tang Feng smiled and said, "In fact, it's not that she's 100 times more valuable, but 1,000 times more valuable. After all, a stunning beauty like you fulfilled that sentence. This woman should only exist in heaven, and there are rare people in the world." Zhuge Furong also smiled, her smile like a flower, and said softly, "So, like me, a stunning beauty with few people in the world, would you choose to run away in a luxury car and give up on me?" Tang Feng said, "Even a slightly normal man wouldn't do it." Zhuge Furong blinked at him and smiled, "I remember you said you were a normal man." After saying these words, she walked into the villa courtyard without looking back. Tang Feng smiled and shook his head, flicking his right middle finger and thumb forward. He immediately shot his cigarette butt into the trash can more than 10 meters away, and then stepped on the accelerator. The $1 million Maserati CEO rushed out like a wild beast. Although tonight's incident was somewhat bizarre and Zhuge Furong's behavior was somewhat sudden, Tang Feng could see that the reason why the other party chose him as a fake boyfriend was probably due to necessity. In fact, as Tang Feng had anticipated, if it weren't for the pressure of the family situation, Zhuge Furong would never have done so. Anha Lane is located in the western district of Jiangning. In the 1980s, the Western District was still the center of the city. At that time, it was bustling and bustling. However, with the development, it had already declined and its central position was gradually replaced by the Eastern District of Linjiang when Tang Feng returned 15 years later. The narrow alleys and roadside lights were dim, and some even made a creaking sound. Tang Feng parked his car at Gate 8, but just as he got off the car, he suddenly froze. Under the street lights, a woman wearing a black leather jacket and pants, with a seductive figure resembling a beautiful snake, leaned against the lamp post and tilted her head slightly, smoking in a very desolate manner. Her narrow eyelashes and flowing eyelashes seemed to reveal an endless sense of desolation, and her curvaceous figure looked a bit thin. However, Tang Feng never doubted that this top-notch beauty was definitely someone who looked thin and had flesh to the touch. Of course, this woman in leather is not the one from the midi bar. The women in the bar exude a vulgar aura and can only barely pass, while the one in front of her is definitely above 90 points, and her appearance is almost on par with Zhuge Farong. At this moment, the woman in leather clothes clearly noticed Tang Feng. She glanced at him sideways and was about to strangle the cigarette butt with her foot. She immediately carried a small shoulder bag, twisted her slender willow waist, and walked towards him with all kinds of charm. Tang Feng had already pushed open the door and was about to walk in. At this moment, he couldn't help but stop and watched as the stunning woman walked towards him step by step. It was only then that he realized that the seductive beauty's eyes had a hint of blue, indicating that she was still of mixed race. The mixed-race beauty walked over and leaned against the corner of the door without speaking. She just turned her head and looked at Tang Feng. At this moment, the distance between the two was no more than 5 centimeters. Tang Feng could even hear her breathing, and of course, he could also smell the faint scent on her body. "Why, don't you plan on calling me up?" The mixed-race beauty suddenly spoke. "Come on in." Tang Feng only said 3 words before pushing the door in. Although the mixed-race beauty in front of him appeared somewhat abnormal, he knew that if something abnormal happened, there would always be a demon, but he didn't ask anything. Without any hesitation, the mixed-race beauty walked in with her heels, passed through a small courtyard inside, walked up the wooden stairs to the 2nd floor, and arrived at the 20-square-meter small attic rented by Tang Feng. Just to Tang Feng's surprise, as soon as he pushed open the wooden door of the attic, the stunning mixed-race beauty hooked around his neck, even pressing her fiery and sexy lips against him. The sudden action undoubtedly surprised Tang Feng, who was completely stunned in place. "Why, no appetite?" The mixed-race beauty exhaled like a orchid, her voice carrying an extremely seductive allure. At present, it was late at night and there were only the 2 of them in the attic, and the door had already been closed. At this moment, as long as it was a slightly normal man, he probably knew what to do. Tang Feng was not only a normal man, but also a strong-willed man, so he had almost no hesitation. He hugged the small and plump waist, then threw it forcefully and threw the charming woman in his arms onto the bed. However, just as Tang Feng was about to take action, the mixed-race beauty remained calm and slowly pulled out a sharp imported military spike from the high boots below. Without any hesitation, the mixed-race woman's wrist trembled and the military stab slashed towards Tang Feng's neck. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. The Legend of the Dragon Hidden Order. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. The Legend of the Dragon Hidden Order. The development of the situation was too sudden, and it was pitch black in the attic. In addition, this mixed-race beauty was shooting at a very fast speed. In such a situation, ordinary people could not react even if their heads fell to the ground, let alone parry. However, just as the sharp and stern military spike was about to roughly hit Tang Feng's neck, the next moment it was sandwiched between his index and middle fingers. Although Tang Feng seemed to be just casually gripping, it seemed that his 2 fingers had taken root with the military thorn, and he still couldn't break free from the mixed-race beauty's tug and tug. "Who sent you?" Although the beauty was still in his arms, Tang Feng's voice was cold at this moment, so cold that there was no trace of emotion. The nearly 10-year cruel life hanging on the line made him understand the meaning of the phrase, kindness to the enemy is cruelty to oneself. However, facing all the seemingly deadly aura emanating from Tang Feng's body, this mixed-race beauty seemed to have no tension at all. She struggled hard for a moment, only to find that she couldn't break free and chose to give up. Instead, she chuckled lightly and said, "The whole world is rumored to be the Dragon Stab King, a divine weapon of China with unparalleled martial arts skills." Today, she saw that she truly deserves her reputation. Tang Feng's face remained expressionless. With a forceful tug of his index and middle fingers, the military stab hit his wrist. Then, his wrist shook and the general stab pressed against her neck. "You have 10 seconds to consider, tell me your background, otherwise don't blame me for being impolite." The mixed-race beauty still had a smile on her face, blinking her long eyelashes. "You still have 3 seconds. Tang Feng's killing intent grew stronger. "I don't believe you're really capable." The mixed-race beauty looked at him. Confidence is a good thing, but overconfidence can be fatal. At this moment, Tang Feng's killing intent surged all over his body, and his wrist trembled. The stunning beauty finally changed her expression and exclaimed in shock, "You bastard, you really can do something. Long Yin, that old man, is right. You're just a beast." Originally, Tang Feng's army thorn had already cut through her skin, and she could easily disappear with just a little more delay. However, upon hearing the words, Long Yin, her hand holding the army thorn froze in an instant. "You just said Long Yin, do you know that old guy? What's your relationship with him?" Tang Feng was extremely surprised. The Dragon Hidden mentioned by the other party is the founder of the current Majestic Dragon Hidden Battalion. His background is incredibly mysterious and powerful, and he is the only remaining old general in China. That is to say, when Tang Feng was 8 years old, an accidental factor caught the eye of the old man and brought him into the Dragon Hidden Battalion. It can be said that the reason why Tang Feng was given the title of Dragon Thorn and gained a prestigious reputation internationally, and was crowned as the Reaper of Death, largely due to the painstaking cultivation of Dragon Hidden. The mixed-race beauty survived the disaster, her heartbeat constantly fluctuating up and down, and she glared angrily, saying, "I not only know the old man Long Yin, but I was also sent by him." "You were sent by him, what evidence do you have?" Tang Feng loosened his grip on the military spike. The mixed-race beauty flipped her wrist and found a 2-finger-sized pure gold token in her palm. Although the attic was pitch black, the pure gold token still emitted a bright golden luster. On the front of this token, a 5-clawed golden dragon soaring through the clouds and mist appeared faintly. The golden dragon looked down with a majestic aura. Tang Feng was naturally familiar with this, and this was the Dragon Hidden Order. Before retiring, Tang Feng also had such a 5-claw dragon hidden token. "You probably don't recognize this thing now, do you?" The stunning beauty drank lightly, perhaps worried that Tang Feng might not be able to see it clearly, and even deliberately shook it in front of him. In fact, when Tang Feng first saw the token, he was basically certain because it was a symbol of the identity of members of the Dragon Hidden Squad, and the dragon token was highly confidential, which outsiders had no way of knowing. "I can't tell, you're still a member of Long Yin, probably a new member after I left, right?" Tang Feng was a bit surprised. "Everyone knows I'm a new member, why don't you get up quickly?" The mixed-race beauty angrily said. It was not until now that Tang Feng finally came to his senses. "Sorry, I was just trying to confirm your identity and forgot for a moment." "Don't take it amiss," Tang Feng said as he stood up and flicked his right hand. He already had the dragon token in his hand. The mixed-race beauty rolled her eyes. Tang Feng smiled but didn't answer. He flipped the Dragon Hidden Order to the back and saw several lines of crooked characters written in ancient tadpole script. "Black Rose, I can't believe you're the recently world-renowned Black Blood Rose." Tang Feng raised his eyebrows, somewhat shocked. Although he has left the Dragon Hidden Battalion now, he still keeps an eye on the big international news. Just at the end of last month, the beautiful woman in black, also known as the Black Rose, stepped alone into the northern wilderness of the Snow Country, annihilated a secret base of over 100 people inside, and finally retreated completely. Black Rose was obviously a bit proud and pursed her lips, saying, "Of course, now you know my girl's strength, right?" Tang Feng just shrugged his shoulders with a noncommittal expression. End of this chapter. 10, Chapter 10. This is absolutely impossible. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. This is absolutely impossible. Tang Feng didn't expect the Black Rose to be so unrestrained and hot, to turn around and tease himself, and for a moment, he was slightly stunned. Black Rose smiled, obviously feeling quite proud of teasing the once dominant Dragon Stab Soldier King. She immediately said, "From the situation just now, you obviously knew that I wasn't selling it out. I'm curious, how did you actually see that?" Tang Feng tilted his body on the sofa and looked at her from the side, saying, "Look at this place. It's a slum in Jiangning, and you see where I live. It's run down, and not to mention it doesn't even have a decent piece of furniture." Black Rose looked around, and indeed, as Tang Feng said, in the attic where this guy lived, apart from the shabby sofa sitting right now, there was only a relatively clean bed left. What does this have to do with selling it? Black Rose still couldn't figure it out. Tang Feng smiled and said, "Of course it's okay. Think about it. If under normal circumstances, let's ask which woman would come to this slum to sell in the middle of the night, let alone a stunning beauty like you who even voluntarily brings her to your door. Do you think this is normal?" Black Rose finally understood, hesitated slightly, then nodded and said, "Indeed, I neglected this." At this point, she smiled again and blinked her charming big eyes as she looked at Tang Feng, saying, "I seem to hear you praise me just now. Is this girl a stunning beauty?" Tang Feng couldn't bear the undisguised and hot teasing of Black Rose. He immediately changed the topic and asked, "What did old man Long Yin send you to find me for?" "He asked you to go back." Black Rose spoke solemnly and put away her joking expression earlier. "He asked me to return to Long Yin." Tang Feng raised his eyebrows and extinguished the remaining half of the cigarette, his expression somewhat complicated. Black Rose looked at him and said, "As the strongest dragon thorn of the past, the captain of the Dragon Hidden Squadron, your departure is a huge loss. In just 3 months, the World Special Forces fighting competition will begin. Without you, I'm afraid no one in China will be the opponent of the Snow Wolf King and the United States Magneto King." She paused for a moment before saying, "And since you grew up in Long Yin, the team has almost poured all your emotions into you. Are you willing to just leave like this?" Tang Feng remained silent and lit his cigarette again. Through the swirling smoke, it was not difficult to notice that his expression was somewhat lonely and desolate. After a long time, he said, "Has Long Yin solved that incident?" Although he did not specifically mention the incident, Black Rose clearly had some understanding. Half a month ago, Dragon Thorn was ordered to protect the visiting Prince of Europe, but he inexplicably punched and killed him in a hotel. This incident caused a huge international sensation, and Tang Feng, under pressure, had to leave the Dragon Hidden Squad. Black Rose said, "On Long Yin's side, we have found a solution." "What method?" Tang Feng immediately asked. As Black Rose mentioned earlier, the Long Yin team has almost poured all Tang Feng's efforts. Not to mention his sense of national mission and responsibility, he is extremely reluctant to let go of the few brothers in the team who have gone through life and death together. If it were not for the pressure of international public opinion and diplomatic means, Tang Feng would naturally not have left. Black Rose said, "Long Yin's plan is to have you go back to the international court and make you confess. Although you may end up sentenced, Long Yin has found a death row inmate and will replace you through means." Upon hearing this, Tang Feng's gaze suddenly froze and he said word for word, "What did you say just now?" "Let me go back and plead guilty." Do you think that the once mighty dragon Stab King, with his unwavering determination, would plead guilty to such a thing? Black Rose suddenly fell silent. In fact, she knew that with the personality of the Dragon Thorn Soldier King, she would never admit guilt. Moreover, although it seemed to be the Dragon Thorn Soldier King's fault at that time, only those who understood it knew the true inside story. The reason why Dragon Thorn publicly killed the Prince of Europe in a hotel is twofold. Firstly, the prince openly insulted Chinese personnel, and secondly, he crazily bullied the waiters in the hotel. Of course, there is a more important reason why this European prince is truly a member of the Blood Cross. As a Western dark organization, the Blood Cross has always been an enemy of China. When the Phoenix of the Dragon Hidden Squadron went on a secret mission to the west, it was heavily pursued by members of the Blood Cross and ultimately fell off a cliff. Its life and death are still unknown. The members of the Dragon Hidden Squad all know that the Phoenix is the woman of the Dragon Sting, with one dragon and one Phoenix, paired in pairs. I wonder how many people envy her. However, nowadays, Phoenix knows no life or death, and Dragon Thorn is forced to retire. After pondering for a moment, Black Rose said, "We all understand that with the heroic and bloodthirsty nature of Dragon Thorn, it is naturally impossible to easily admit guilt, but besides that, Dragon Hidden has no other choice. You know he also has difficulties." Tang Feng didn't want to say much. He became immersed in a narrow attic and said for a long time, "You go back and tell Long Yin that I, the Dragon Thorn, should confess my guilt and confess to the international community. This cannot be done, absolutely cannot be done." Black Rose furrowed her brows, intending to say something, but she also knew that no matter what words were spoken, she was probably powerless in front of this man at this moment. According to my information and intelligence, the Western Blood Cross has already issued a blood letter pursuit order. It is estimated that many assassination experts have infiltrated China and threatened to take your head to avenge their prince. Western assassins. Tang Feng smiled and raised his lips slightly. Over the past decade, are there still fewer assassins in the Shadow Realm who have died in my hands? Black Rose cannot disagree with this point. After all, she had already heard about this man's deeds before she joined the Dragon Hidden team. Nevertheless, I still hope you can be careful. It is said that the expert who launched the Blood Cross this time is extraordinary. Black Rose thought for a moment and said. Tang Feng smiled without hesitation and continued to sit there swallowing clouds and mist. The attic fell into silence again, and Black Rose suddenly asked, "Can you talk about the Phoenix? I know you and that Phoenix entered Dragon Hidden together, trained and executed missions together, and your feelings for the Phoenix were unknown to everyone in Dragon Hidden. I'm really curious, what kind of woman is Phoenix?" Black Rose said, teasing her hair. In fact, in the Chinese army, there were two extraordinary women in the past. One was the Northern Dragon Hidden Phoenix, and the other was the Black Rose. These two women, who combine beauty and talent throughout their lives, are like two shining stars gazing at each other in the north and south. They have heard of each other, but have never met before. Unfortunately, now the Phoenix has fallen, leaving only the Black Rose blooming. You're talking about Phoenix? Tang Feng murmured and sighed, his tone blank, as he slowly exhaled his cigarette rings. Through the smoke before his eyes, Tang Feng's gaze seemed to see a figure as noble, proud, and magnificent as a phoenix, and he turned his gaze with a dazzling and charming smile. End of this chapter.